hearing from Steve Levy on how does Brotherhood, Nucleus, and Healing, how do they function and work together? So, you want to, Steve? And he's from the United Lodge of Theosophy here in Philadelphia.
Good morning. As an independent associate of the United Lodge of Theosophists here in Philadelphia, I welcome you to the city of brotherly love. It is an idea that inspires and an ideal toward which we aspire in the face of all obstacles. I'm going to begin by telling you a story. A father and mother were talking to their son and daughter while enjoying dinner. From the decor of their home and the exquisite presentation of the meal, it was clear that they were prosperous. Their ease was based on a confidence in the just laws that governed their city and secured the peace. The daughter enthusiastically talked about her friends and classmates who came from all over the world and how much she enjoyed learning about new cultures. Her brother reminded her that many of her classmates came from lands where they had to escape the brutality, but nevertheless found it very hard to be adapting and be accepted in their new homeland. Their father tried to reassure them by telling them that through trade and travel, their country would be able to improve the conditions of these other lands. And the mother looked at her son and said, "Well, you shouldn't be so concerned about things. I'd rather you focus on your studies so you don't fail out of the officer training program, the Army officer training program, and tarnish the honor of the family name." And she added with a smile, "After all, it's not going to be the end of the world." Well, she was wrong. The next day, the world, as far as this family knew it, did come to an end. This is a fictional story, but maybe it sounds true and familiar. Maybe it reminds you of a family you know. But this is not a modern family. This story does not take place in August 2017. It takes place on August 23rd, 410 AD. The next day, the barbarians launched a surprise attack, broke through the gate, and sacked their beautiful city of Rome, the light of the world for 1,000 years. Their home was burnt to the ground. Many of their friends and acquaintances suffered. The family escaped with their lives by fleeing to Africa, but they each lost something important. The father lost his sense of moral integrity. The daughter lost her sense of moral innocence. The son lost faith in his heroes, and the mother lost hope when she realized that worldly possessions and glory were temporary. Rome may have fallen, but human nature and the human condition have remained the same. Our society and institutions, our worldview and self-identity have been sacked by forces that have scorched human character and left many with a sense of loss of all that was good the famous modernist Virginia Woolf wrote on or about December 1910, human character changed. Why she chose that date is a matter of scholarly debate. However, she pointed to a truth that outward change of conventions and institutions is preceded by a change in character, feeling, and perspective, and to the fact that sometime around the beginning of the 20th century, humanity entered an age of transition that would change everything and end the world of science, religion, politics, social conventions, and institutions as we knew it. According to the teachings of Theosophy, souls incarnate on average every 1,500 years. As souls incarnate together, they bring back with them the tendencies and characteristics of previous civilizations, which allows cyclic law to influence human affairs. 1910 was exactly 1,500 years after the sack of Rome. When Rome was sacked, new empires grew out of its smoldering ashes, and the survivors and inhabitants of the new world that followed needed healing from the immediate impact, prolonged influence, and memory of the trauma. Humanity in the 21st century also faces great prospects, terrifying possibilities, and traumatic wounds that need healing. It is an opportune time to diagnose the pathology that pervades modern civilization, examine its symptoms and causes, as well as to understand the healing function of a nucleus of universal brotherhood. Human beings share a desire for happiness, peace, and security because suffering is pervasive in this world. Suffering is the common condition of humanity and an ever-present reality. Besides natural causes which are inseparable from human existence, suffering is aggravated by two self-inflicted wounds. First, there is the painful awareness of the apparent inequality and injustice of unmerited suffering, which inflames anger, jealousy, and hate. Second, misery is amplified by those who are frustrated, despairing, and disappointed because they cannot find enduring happiness, peace, and security in this world. They try to build their Camelot on the shifting sands of a desert. Failed attempts to reach their impossible dream incite their suffering and inflict further misery on others. The problem of finding enduring happiness, peace, and security in this world is rooted in the misuse of desire in accordance with our attitude towards ourselves and the world. If the foremost desire is to dominate and control the world, conditions, and others in order to achieve happiness, and build our personal empire of stature and wealth, a sense of enduring security and peace will continuously slip away. If the foremost desire is to hold on tightly to security and peace in this world, then a sense of enduring happiness will be eroded. The unrestrained desire to achieve enduring personal happiness in this world can transform into an insatiable lust that corrupts character, enslaves the will, distorts relationships, and creates conflict. If the foremost desire is to achieve enduring personal happiness in this world, it may come at a great personal cost. The individual will lose their moral compass and become blind and insensitive to moral evils. It is tempting for them to adopt an attitude that so long as it feels good now and fulfills the immediate need, what could be wrong with what they do? The worldly life is good, but it does not secure peace. The social life is good, but it does not secure peace. Neither does the care of the body, which is also a good thing. Enduring happiness is inner peace of mind. The religious life should secure peace of mind, but too often it is pursued for personal benefit or to achieve other worldly rewards. What passes for a religious life is too often based on blind belief and superstition, or merely going through the motions of a ritual. Peace of mind is knowing who you are. Enduring peace of mind is the child of a truer realization of the self. By far, the greatest cause of human suffering is ignorance, or rather a lack of knowledge to answer two very important questions. What should we do when suffering is inflicted upon us? If this suffering is inevitable, can it be put to any good use? The saviors of the world have taught humanity how to endure suffering. The essence of their teachings and the examples of their lives are clear. Suffering is endured by selflessness, which is the death of self-interest. This is a straightforward answer to the first question, but a torturous and difficult path to follow. Nevertheless, it is not enough to endure suffering. One needs to learn how to put their suffering to good use in the service and progress of humanity. The challenge is to partake of the happiness of the spiritual life while dwelling amidst the suffering of the physical life. How to be healthy in spirit and a force for healing in the physical world. Brotherhood, a nucleus, and healing function so as to solve the problem of suffering, find enduring happiness, peace, and security in this world, and how to put suffering to good use. Practicing brotherhood in thought, word, and deed functions in three ways to solve the problem of finding happiness, peace, and security in this world. First, where there is chaos and discord in the world, brotherhood restores harmony and balance. Second, where dissociation and separateness prevail, brotherhood inspires association and unity. Third, where antagonism, ill will, intolerance, hatred, and antipathy reign in the world or in the heart, brotherhood subdues them with benevolence. In order for brotherhood to have its restorative, inspiring, and subduing force, it must be focused and work through a vehicle. That is the function of a nucleus. The nucleus is a vehicle for the manifestation of brotherhood as a potent force in nature in three ways. The nucleus provides the center, the core, and the basis for influence of force. As a center, it attracts that which lies on the periphery, exterior, or outside edge, like the atomic nucleus in the center of a cloud of electrons. A nucleus of universal brotherhood attracts individuals of different nations, races, creeds, and conditions to a center of force whose power of coherence is a similarity of aim, purpose, and principles. As a core or essence, it influences and guides the whole, likely a nucleus of a plant or animal cell. A nucleus of universal brotherhood guides the theosophical movement as a whole through the influence of a fundamental principle, which is its essence, universal unity based on the spiritual identity of all beings. In this way, a relatively small association of human beings can influence the progress of humanity. As a basis, a nucleus functions as the model, like the germ cell of a plant or animal, which contains the latent potentiality for all the future generations of the species. A nucleus of universal brotherhood provides the basis, hope, possibility, and potentiality for the brotherhood of the future generations of humanity. Healing functions to mend injury, ameliorate suffering, regenerate that which is weakened, and rejuvenate that which is decayed. Healing takes place when the latent potential within becomes the active potency without. Healing is a natural force that is effective only when it moves from within outwards. The body is not healed from without. All healers, trained or natural, know how to facilitate the healing process. Those who wish to assist the healing of humanity have to begin from within, to remove the ideas, perspectives, and motives that are responsible for most of our ills and suffering. The healing force of any substance lies within its essential nature. In the lower kingdoms of nature, the healing force lies within the life essence, common in all the kingdoms. In the human kingdom, the healing force also comes from the spiritual nature when appropriately directed by the mind. Remove the ideas that distort imagination and inflame fears, the inner healing force is released, and half, if not 2/3, of illnesses will be ameliorated. The essential healing force of Theosophy is the force of spiritual ideas in action, released through study, application, and work. Spirit and spiritual ideas are centrifugal and centripetal, repulsive and attractive in nature. They repel ignorance, prejudice, dogmatism, and selfishness, like the essences of thyme, oregano, and rosemary repel bugs. They attract wisdom, tolerance, open-mindedness, and altruism, like the essences of rose, jasmine, and lavender attract bees. This brings us back to the beginning, to the ideal and idea of a city of brotherly love, another term for a nucleus of universal brotherhood. All that we know about human nature and the human condition instructs that the city of brotherly love as a nucleus of power, influence, and healing cannot be entirely of this world. H.P. Blavatsky wrote that in the symbolism of the ancient wisdom, to build a city was to establish a center for study, application, and promulgation of the truths regarding the hidden inner causes behind the manifesting phenomena and transitory appearances. As such, the true essence of the city of brotherly love, the true nucleus of universal brotherhood, is not of this phenomenal transitory world. Although it can be temporarily manifest in an individual, association, organization, or community, whenever that city appears, its true center is eternal, universal, and spiritual. Whenever that city is founded, its strength and endurance come from the unity that exists on inner planes. Wherever that city is built, its force and influence come from the higher wisdom and discernment of its citizens. Can such a city of brotherly love be built by human hands? Can the nucleus of universal brotherhood be formed on earth? It is the primary objective of the Theosophical movement and the common aspiration of every Theosophist to build such a city, which would be a glorious thing to behold, the greatest wonder of the world, ancient or modern, far more spectacular than any magical power, and a healing force of relief that suffering humanity has waited for too long. Thank you. How do I do it?
Time for a couple questions.
Couple questions?
There's time for a couple of questions. Do we have the microphone handy?
You reminded us of that notion about a city being like a brotherhood, that, you know, the founding of a city originally had to do with the founding of brotherhood. I wonder if you had some further thoughts on that, because that's an intriguing idea about a nucleus and brotherhood. So if you had any more thoughts on that idea.
More thoughts on a center as a nucleus of universal brotherhood. Or the city. Well, we go back to that statement of HPB that an organization, an association, an individual is only a temporary vehicle. And it has its necessary life, its beginning and end. But its true vision and goal, for as long as it does endure in this temporary world, is to transmit that which is eternal, universal, and true. The real nucleus of universal brotherhood, and we think we're beginning here from the abstract working downward, the real nucleus of universal brotherhood, the real city of brotherhood where we all dwell as souls, is on the inner planes as souls. And the vehicles we have are only the means. So our primary duty in building the city begins with ourselves. And we're going to get more into the practical applications later. But does that not mean to be watchful, attentive, and purposeful in how we construct our vehicle, how we speak, how we act, how we feel? And by extension, what influence do we have as that city expands to our family, our community, our theosophical brothers and sisters and associations?
I was interested in your reference to the rejuvenative powers of herbs and plants. You mentioned those a couple of times. And is there a way when one is building a city to purposefully have a connection with nature to bring more of a healing influence into the city?
Yes. We think the question refers to recognize the healing influence of nature. And of course, in ancient times, the principle was to construct the civilization and city in harmony, in mimicry, in conjunction with the surrounding environment, so that the environment and the city, the outside and the inside, were as interactive and as clear as looking through a large pane glass window, sharing. Of course, today, it seems to be the other way around, that very often our urban expansion takes precedence over the considerations of nature. We impose ourselves. And of course, we have limited the healing natural effect that nature, particularly the plant kingdom, can have on us. And so part of establishing a nucleus of universal brotherhood is to take it out of just the human realm, but extend it to all the kingdoms of nature, to secure their peace, security, and harmonious interaction with humanity. And this, of course, takes place best in individual, local endeavors.
We have time for one more. Joe?
My question is regarding at the beginning of your speech regarding loss of all material possessions. I keep thinking about the executives on Wall Street, you know, people who go and trade and make millions of dollars and gain as much material possession as possible. And I know people like that, actually. Versus some man or woman who's in the jungles of India, you know, helping orphans and, you know, taking bucket showers of cold water. Who's actually suffering here? The person who gets nothing by the time they're 50, but has helped a bunch of orphans, versus the guy who lives, you know, in great luxury, you know, but by the time he's 50, he's got no worries and his kids are, you know, paid for college.
Who is suffering when we compare those two extremes? Well, they're both suffering in different ways. And as often happens with an illness, we're not aware of its insidious pathology spreading through and influencing our nature until it comes forth as a symptom, and sometimes that's too late, or a lot of more work has to be done. Ultimately, it's humanity that's suffering, because no one suffers individually without affecting others, and vice versa. There's nothing that the person who is making, whose effort is to guide business and companies and infrastructure, they're performing a useful task on the outer plane. But once again, it gets back to the inner motive, the inner feeling and perspective, why they are doing it, to what use are they putting it. And here is where the central idea of the nucleus of universal brotherhood here. Wherever an individual is, whether they are in some disadvantaged external condition in this life or a very advantageous one, if their aspiration is to serve, to help the growth and influence of that spread of brotherly love, of care, all expressed in that overall idea of brotherhood, universal brotherhood, then they are a part of a healing force. To the extent that either one of them neglect that, ignore that, or work to the opposite, then they are either suffering at the time or setting up the time when they will suffer, when those things are taken away or threatened, as they will at some point in a transitory world.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Steve.